notice how some people use that phrase, like, I'm just trying to live my life, as a justification for almost anything?
Yeah.
Like, cutting you off in traffic or calling in sick on Monday when they're obviously hungover.
Right.
Makes you wonder, is that really living life, to the fullest?
Yeah. Is that what it means?
Like, it reminds me of this French bandit, Bonotto.
Okay.
Talk about living your life to the extreme.
Right.
This guy was robbing banks and just living outside the law in the early 1900s.
Wow.
But it kind of begs the question, what does it actually look like
Right.
to live a full life?
Yeah.
One that's actually filled with, like, purpose and meaning. So that's what we're diving into today.
Right.
We're looking at this essay from 1905.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
Okay.
It's called Education and the Fullness of Life.
Okay.
And get this, it offers some surprisingly relevant insights,
Okay.
even in our tech-saturated, always-on world.
Yeah, it's really interesting how even back then they were already kind of grappling with these ideas of like what makes a fulfilling life. And it wasn't just about a material wealth or climbing the social ladder.
Yeah.
They were advocating for something much richer.
Deeper, more holistic.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
The essay starts by emphasizing the importance of connecting with nature, getting your hands dirty, like literally swimming, dancing, learning a craft. These aren't just hobbies.
Right.
They're presented as pathways to a more fulfilling existence.
Yeah.
And I'm struck by how this idea from 1905 resonates so strongly today.
I know.
Especially with this whole back to basics movement.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, we have to remember advocating for these types of activities in the early 1900s, particularly for the working class.
Yeah.
That was actually quite progressive.
Yeah, it wasn't the norm.
It wasn't about leisure. It was about recognizing the inherent value of physical engagement and its connection to a well-rounded life.
It's like they understood intuitively what we're now proving with scientific research.
Yes.
That physical activity, being in nature, using your hands, it nourishes something deeper within us.
Exactly. And the essay even gives this example of field clubs gaining popularity at the time.
Okay.
So imagine this. Weavers and miners.
Okay.
Spending their free time as amateur botanists and geologists.
Wow.
This wasn't just some quirky pastime.
Yeah.
This speaks to, I think, a fundamental human need to learn to explore, to find joy in discovering the world around us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It really challenges those assumptions about who's allowed to be intellectually curious.
Right, exactly.
But here's where the essay takes an even more radical turn.
Okay.
It doesn't stop at physical activity and connecting with nature. It dives headfirst into the importance of feeding your mind. And they don't hold back at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So they're really going there.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where the essay really directly challenges, I think, some of the educational trends of the time.
Okay.
There was this growing movement that was really pushing for a things not words approach to learning.
Okay.
Especially for the working class.
Interesting. So basically just showing people how to do things, not necessarily how to think about them?
Precisely.
Hello?
The emphasis was on practical skills, which, of course, are important.
Right.
But this essay argues that true understanding, true engagement with the world requires more than just rote action.
Right.
It requires vocabulary.
Yeah.
It requires critical thinking, the ability to articulate ideas and concepts.
Right. So it's like the difference between just baking a loaf of bread because you're following a recipe.
Exactly.
Versus actually understanding the science behind why yeast makes bread rise.
Yes.
Exactly. That deeper understanding adds a whole other dimension to the experience.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
And what's so fascinating is that this debate about the purpose of education, about the balance between practical skills and critical thinking, this is something we're still grappling with today.
Absolutely. And they're not exactly subtle about it either.
Right.
The essay actually draws this really powerful analogy between like neglecting your mental diet and actual starvation.
Wow.
It's like, whoa.
That's a bold comparison.
Yeah. They're basically saying that craving literature is as essential as craving food.
Yeah.
Especially when you're starved for it.
Especially when you're starved for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just about like sounding eloquent or something.
Right.
It's about recognizing that access to knowledge, to literature, is fundamental to living a full and meaningful life. Yeah. Makes you wonder, are we still kind of guilty of mind starvation today?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're bombarded with information 24/7.
Right.
But is it really nourishing us?
That's the question.
Or are we just like snacking on empty calories, so to speak?
Yeah, and the essay seems to suggest that true sustenance comes from really engaging with ideas, deeply wrestling with these like complex questions, allowing yourself to get lost in these meaty, thought-provoking works of literature.
Which, okay, easier said than done. When you're scrolling through endless TikToks and tweets, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do we even, I don't even remember the last time I, like, sat down with a book.
It's a different experience.
Yeah.
It is.
So how did they view reading differently back then compared to how we kind of consume information today?
Well, it's interesting because the essay actually talks about how even during hard manual labor, people would find, like, solace and even joy in just losing themselves in a good book.
Really?
It was this way to kind of transcend their circumstances.
Wow.
To engage with these bigger ideas.
Yeah.
To connect with something beyond their immediate reality.
That paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like even back then, they understood the power of literature.
Yeah.
To transport you, to give you that mental escape. Right. It wasn't just a pastime. It was an essential part of what it meant to be human.
It's a fundamental part of the human experience, I think.
Yeah.
And while our modes of like consuming information have certainly like evolved, I think that fundamental human need to connect with stories, to find meaning and inspiration and narratives, that's unchanged.
Really is.
In fact, you know, modern research has even shown that reading, particularly literary fiction, can increase empathy.
Yeah.
It can improve focus.
Wow.
It can even reduce stress.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like that saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Right?
Right, exactly.
But I'm curious, the essay doesn't just stop at advocating for reading more novels or whatever. It also tackles this really interesting and surprisingly controversial issue of who deserves access to this kind of enriching education.
Right. And this is where I think the essay's message really starts to feel incredibly modern and honestly a bit radical. Even by today's standards.
Wow.
They completely reject this notion that like complex or challenging material should be reserved for the elite.
Right.
Or that the working class wouldn't be interested in engaging with it.
So they were basically advocating for educational equity.
Exactly.
Back in 1905.
Back in 1905.
That's pretty mind-blowing when you think about like
I know, it's really
the social context of the time.
It's pretty amazing. And they argue that intelligence and the capacity for intellectual growth are not determined by social class or economic background.
Right.
It's a fundamental human trait.
It's interesting.
And denying anyone access to knowledge, to those tools of critical thinking and self-expression, they saw that as a disservice to both the individual and society as a whole.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
It is.
And it makes me wonder if we fully grasped like the implications of that even today, you know?
Yeah.
But how exactly did they suggest we bridge that gap? Was it about making education more accessible? Or was it something like more fundamental?
That's a good question.
So they're making this big case for educational equity.
Yeah.
But how did they propose we actually make it happen?
Okay.
Did they have any concrete ideas about bridging that gap?
Well, one of their key arguments is that true understanding, true engagement with complex ideas requires more than just absorbing facts. It requires this ability to articulate those ideas, to discuss them, to wrestle with them using language.
It's like you can have a head full of brilliant thoughts, but if you can't express them, do they even exist outside your own mind?
Exactly.
Kind of a matrix situation there.
Totally. And that's where they saw literature playing a really crucial role.
Yeah.
Okay.
They believed that immersing yourself in great books, engaging with powerful language and nuanced ideas, it wasn't just about entertainment or escapism.
Right.
It was about expanding your capacity for thought itself.
It's like building mental muscle.
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
Instead of lifting weights, you're lifting metaphors.
Exactly.
And dissecting symbolism.
Yes. And just like any muscle, the more you exercise that capacity for language, the stronger, more flexible it becomes.
You're better equipped to kind of grapple with those complex issues.
Yes.
To articulate your own thoughts and feelings.
Totally.
And to connect with others on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Which, let's be real, are pretty essential skills in navigating life in general.
Absolutely.
And the essay argues that this kind of deep engagement with language and literature, this shouldn't be a luxury that's reserved for the privileged few.
Right.
It's essential for a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
For a thriving society for everyone.
So circling back to that quote about bridging the gap,
it
sounds like their answer was, in a way, pretty simple.
Okay.
Make those tools of critical thinking, those gateways to knowledge and self-expression, accessible to everyone.
Exactly. It's about leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that every individual, regardless of their background, has the potential to contribute to the intellectual and creative tapestry of society as a whole.
It's amazing to think that this essay written over a century ago is still sparking these conversations.
Yeah.
It feels so incredibly relevant today.
It really is incredible. It speaks to, I think, the enduring power of these ideas.
Yeah.
This idea that a fulfilling life is about more than just material comfort or social standing.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a curious mind, embracing lifelong learning, and challenging ourselves to engage with the world in a meaningful way.
It's like they're giving us this recipe for a fulfilling life, a dash of nature, a healthy serving of physical activity, and a heaping spoonful of intellectual curiosity.
I love it.
All seasoned with a commitment to learning and growth.
Beautifully said.
Right.
And perhaps most importantly, advocating for everyone to have access to those same ingredients, regardless of their circumstances.
So the next time you find yourself maybe mindlessly scrolling or just feeling that pang of, is this all there is? Remember that essay from 1905? It's a good reminder that a full life is within reach.
It is.
It's about making those conscious choices to feed your mind, nurture your curiosity, and never stop exploring the world around you.
I love that.